Let's get ready for sleep with a gentle bedtime story I have for you. It's nothing exciting, but it is peaceful and kind. In this crazy world, sometimes we just need some softness at the end of the day to remind us there's always hope. Before we start, let's do a short, gentle sleep meditation together. Let's begin by getting comfortable exactly as you are. You do not need to fix anything right now. You do not need to force sleep or chase the perfect feeling. Tonight, you're allowed to simply arrive. If it helps, let your body find one small point of ease. Maybe it's your jaw unclenching. Maybe it's your shoulders lowering just a little. Maybe it's your hands resting without holding on to the day. Take a slow breath in through your nose. And let your exhale be a little longer than your inhale. Again, inhale softly. And exhale gently, as if you're fogging a window with warmth. If your mind is busy, that's okay. Busy minds are not bad minds. They're just tired minds. You are not behind for feeling this way. You are not doing sleep wrong. Now, notice the support beneath you. The bed, the pillow, the blanket, holding you without asking anything in return. Let yourself be held for a moment. Let yourself be safe enough to soften. If any worry tries to tug at you, you can set it down beside you like a folded coat. You can pick it up tomorrow if you need to. But tonight you're allowed to rest first. Rest is not something you have to earn. Bring your attention to your forehead. Let it smooth. Bring your attention to your eyes. Let them feel heavy and quiet behind the lids. Bring your attention to your chest. Notice that you are breathing, even if it's shallow, even if it's uneven. Your body already knows how to carry you into the night. You can trust it to do what it's built to do. And now imagine a soft light somewhere nearby. Not bright, not startling, just a gentle glow, like a lantern behind frosted glass. With each exhale, that glow feels warmer. With each inhale, it feels steadier. You're doing so well. Even listening right now counts as taking care of yourself. Even if sleep takes its time, you are still safe here. You are still resting in the meantime. And when you're ready, we'll begin tonight's cozy bedtime story. A gentle little tale made of soft mornings, warm kindness, and the quiet comfort of knowing you don't have to do life alone. Enjoy tonight's bedtime story. I almost missed the note because it was hidden the way comfort often is. Quietly, gently, and without asking to be thanked. It was tucked beneath a paper liner, pressed flat like it had been waiting for the exact moment I would finally slow down enough to notice it. And when I unfolded it, my whole morning changed, not loudly, but in the softest possible way. Saturday mornings in our neighborhood begin before the world fully wakes up. The streetlights still glow faintly, like they are finishing a night shift. And the sky is a pale lavender that promises sunlight but doesn't rush it. Even the air feels quieter, as if it's holding its breath so no one's peace gets startled. I wake early on purpose, long before my alarm ever has a chance to be useful. My body knows the routine by heart, because routines like this aren't just habits, they're small anchors. This one is my favorite, our cinnamon roll swap at sunrise. It started months ago, maybe longer, and no one can quite agree on who began it. That's part of why it works, I think, because it belongs to everyone and no one at the same time. Every weekend, neighbors place covered plates on their windowsills, and sometime between early dawn and mid-morning, the plates quietly trade places. No doorbells. No awkward small talk in pajamas. No pressure to be on. Just warm baking and anonymous kindness moving gently from window to window. It's a tradition made of hush and sugar, and I've come to rely on it more than I'd like to admit. When the week feels sharp, Saturday feels rounded and soft again. I slip out of bed and pull on a sweater without thinking too hard about the day ahead. My apartment is still dim, the kind of dim that makes everything feel forgiving. I pad into the kitchen and breathe in yesterday's cinnamon lingering faintly in the air, like the memory of something good. I already baked the rolls the night before because I like waking up to a home that smells like comfort. All I have to do is warm them, wrap them, and place them on the sill like a small offering to the morning. I slide them into the oven, and as they heat, the sweetness rises into the air and makes the whole room feel kinder. While they warm, I make tea and stand by the window, watching the street. A stray cat crosses the sidewalk like it owns the quiet, tail high, unbothered by anything. Farther down, I see a curtain move just slightly, like someone else is awake too. There is something oddly comforting about knowing I'm not the only one who finds peace in this hour. We don't speak, but we're together in the smallest way, stitched by the shared softness of morning. It makes loneliness feel less like a wall and more like a curtain, thin enough for light to pass through. When the timer dings, I pull the cinnamon rolls out and let the heat bloom up into my face. The tops are golden and slightly glossy, and the icing melts just a little, the way it should. I wrap them in a clean towel, still warm, and place them on a simple ceramic plate I've used for the swap since the beginning. I cover the plate with a second dish turned upside down, like a little dome. There is something ceremonial about it, like I'm protecting sweetness until it finds the right home. Then I carry it to the windowsill and set it down carefully. The window glass is cool against my fingertips, and the contrast makes me feel awake in the best way. I pause there for a moment, looking at the plate as if it might say something back. Okay, I whisper, as if the morning can hear me. After that, I let myself live the rest of the morning without hovering. I tidy a little, not because I need to, but because slow tasks feel soothing when the sun is still gentle. I read a few pages of a book and I try not to check the window every 5 minutes like a kid waiting for a surprise. But the truth is, I'm always waiting for it. The swap is a small mystery that never turns into something scary, only something sweet. And lately, I've needed sweet things that don't ask anything from me in return. By late morning, the sun has brightened, and the neighborhood has begun to hum with normal life. Cars pass, someone walks a dog, and the world seems to remember it has plans. That's usually when I go back to the window and see what the morning has brought me. I step up to the sill and feel a small flutter in my chest. My plate is gone, just like always, and in its place is a different one, covered neatly, as if it arrived with quiet respect. It looks homey in a way that makes my shoulders drop without permission. I bring it into the kitchen and set it on the counter like it's precious. The cover lifts with a soft clink, and underneath I find a neat stack of something that looks like homemade pastries. Maybe a sweet bread, maybe scones, wrapped in parchment with twine. The whole thing smells like butter and vanilla and patience. I smile before I even taste it. That's the thing about this swap. It feeds you before you take a bite. It reminds you that someone nearby, someone you've never met properly, took time to make something warm for a stranger. I reach for the parchment to unwrap it, and that's when I notice something unusual. A tiny folded square of paper is tucked beneath the plate liner, almost invisible, like it's trying not to take up space. For a second, I wonder if it was an accident, like a scrap left behind by mistake. But it's folded too neatly to be accidental. It's positioned too intentionally, hidden in the way you hide something when you want it found, but only by the right person. My fingertips hesitate above it and my breath slows. I slide the note free and hold it like it might crumble if I'm not gentle enough. The paper is thin but smooth, and it feels oddly personal to be touching something that came from someone else's quiet hand. I unfold it carefully, one crease at a time. The message inside is short, simple, soft as steam rising from a mug. If you're reading this, I hope your morning feels soft. I stare at the words longer than I need to. My throat tightens in that surprising way it does when something kind lands too close to the heart. Because it's not just a note, not really. It's a tiny recognition that someone out there understands the shape of a hard week. I didn't realize how much I needed to be wished softness until it was offered. I didn't realize I'd been bracing myself every morning like the day might demand something from me immediately. But this note asks for nothing, and somehow that makes it feel even more generous. My eyes flick toward the window as if I might spot the person who wrote it. Of course I don't, because the whole point is that I won't. Still, I imagine them. Someone in slippers, someone careful, someone who knows how to tuck kindness into corners. A small warmth spreads through my chest, steady and slow. Curiosity blooms beside it, gentle and bright. Because now I know the swap isn't only about baked goods. It's about being seen without being watched. It's about care that doesn't need credit. It's about a neighbor reaching out from behind a curtain and leaving a quiet reminder that I'm not alone in this morning. I set the note on the counter and press my palm over it as if I can absorb its softness through paper. Then I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Thank you, I whisper to the empty kitchen, and it doesn't feel silly. I take a bite of the pastry, and it tastes like someone meant it. Not perfect, not fancy, just real and tender and warm. And as I chew, I already know what I'll do next weekend. Because a note like this doesn't end when you finish reading it. It becomes a little spark you carry, looking for somewhere else to land. And I can feel that spark in me now, lighting up the idea of passing softness on. All week, the note stayed with me like a small candle I didn't want to blow out. Not bright enough to distract me, but steady enough to soften the edges of everything. I would be washing dishes and suddenly remember those words, and my shoulders would drop as if they had been waiting for permission. I didn't feel anxious about it. I felt comforted, like someone had quietly tucked a warm scarf around my thoughts. And the more I replayed it, the more I wanted to answer in the same language. The rules of the swap are simple, and they matter. No names, no direct contact, no guessing, no knocking on doors. Anonymity is what makes it safe, like a little pocket of gentleness stitched into the weak. So I planned my reply the way you plan something tender. Quietly, carefully, without trying to make it bigger than it needed to be. I didn't want to turn it into a performance. By Friday night, my kitchen smelled like cinnamon again. I rolled dough on a floured counter, listening to the soft rhythm of it, the way it thumped and gave and came back to my hands. There's something soothing about baking when you're not rushing, like you're building warmth one simple step at a time. I decided to add a tiny extra treat this time, something small and sweet and unassuming. Just a little something that said, "I thought of you," without saying I. I wrapped everything neatly, the way my grandmother used to wrap things when she wanted love to travel safely. Then I found a small square of paper. My pen hovered for a moment before it touched down. I wanted the words to feel like a soft landing. Thank you for the softness. I'm passing it on. I read it twice, then folded it into a tiny, careful shape. I tucked it beneath the liner the same way the first note had been tucked for me. Hidden but not lost. On Saturday morning, I set my covered plate on the windowsill and stepped back. The sky was pale and sleepy, and the street looked rinsed clean by dawn. I didn't linger, because part of the tradition is letting go. Still, I found myself smiling at random moments, like my body knew something good was moving through the neighborhood. When mid-morning arrived, I returned to the window with the same little flutter in my chest. My plate was gone, and a new one sat in its place like a quiet gift. I carried it to the counter and lifted the cover. Inside were tidy little cookies, golden at the edges, with a scent like butter and calm. And there it was again, the smallest folded note waiting under the liner. I unfolded it slowly, almost reverently. The handwriting was different this time, rounder, slightly slanted, as if the words were leaning in. My breath caught before I even finished reading. I needed this more than you know. For a moment, I just stood there in my quiet kitchen, holding that sentence like it was something fragile and true. My eyes stung, not from sadness, but from the sudden closeness of it. Because that wasn't a reply to my note alone, not really. It felt like a voice joining a growing hush, like more than one person was speaking through sugar and paper. I looked toward the windows across the way, imagining other kitchens, other hands, other mornings. And I realized the swap might be turning into something more than a trade. It might be becoming a quiet conversation across windowsills, a thread of anonymous kindness, passing from home to home, keeping us warm without ever asking us to step into the light. And somehow that made me feel safer than being known. By the third weekend, I could feel the swap changing the way you feel a room warm up before you even touch the radiator. Nothing dramatic happened, and yet everything felt different, as if kindness had learned to linger. The plates still arrived quietly, the windowsills still stayed anonymous, but the offerings began to carry a new tenderness. The first thing I noticed was the wrapping. Parchment folded into neat little envelopes, twine tied into careful bows, towels pressed smooth like someone had taken their time on purpose. Even the smallest treats looked like they'd been dressed up for someone who deserved extra care. Then came the little bonus items tucked in like secrets. A tea bag that smelled like chamomile and honey. A single sugar packet with a tiny smile drawn on it. One morning, I found a paper heart cut out so neatly it had to have been made with patience. Another time there was a tiny wrapped mint, as if someone wanted my day to feel fresh and gentle. I started saving these things in a small dish by my window, a quiet collection of proof that softness was real. I also began noticing patterns, the harmless kind that don't break rules. A sprig of dried lavender appeared more than once, tucked under a ribbon like a little blessing. A certain handwriting leaned left, as if it was shy, while another one stood tall and rounded like it was trying to be brave. But nothing revealed anyone's identity. No names, no hints, no accidental signatures. Just tiny echoes of personality, like someone humming through the wall in a comforting way. I found myself thinking about the note that said, "I needed this more than you know," at the strangest moments. While I was folding laundry, I'd picture someone standing alone at their counter, reading a message like it was a life raft. And I realized I didn't want my notes to belong to any one person anymore. So I tried something new. Instead of writing as if I were speaking to one neighbor, I wrote as if I were speaking to whoever was having the hardest morning. I wrote notes meant to float, like dandelion seeds, and land where they were needed most. You're doing better than you think. Your rest matters too. You don't have to earn peace. I didn't sign them. I didn't add clues. I simply folded them small and tucked them beneath the liner, the same way the first note had been tucked for me. After that, the chain seemed to grow on its own, like a garden that had finally been watered enough. More tokens appeared, and not just from one source. A tiny packet of cocoa. A sticker of a sleepy moon. A strip of paper with an affirmation written in careful print, as if someone wanted it to feel official. Even the treats started to feel like messages, shaped into comfort and passed hand to hand without hands ever meeting. I would stand at my window some mornings and look out at the neat line of buildings, each one holding 100 private stories behind curtains. And I'd feel the neighborhood becoming softer, not because anything was fixed, but because people were gently reaching for one another anyway. It made me wonder who was struggling quietly behind the windows, pretending they were fine until a note or a cookie reminded them they didn't have to be alone in it. Somewhere out there, someone was leaving lavender like a promise. Someone was cutting paper hearts in the dark. And I started to believe that even if we never stepped into each other's doorways, we were still learning how to care. That weekend, I knew something was different before I even touched the plate. The morning itself felt ordinary. Pale sky, quiet street, the familiar hush of early light. But the offering on my windowsill looked like it had been set down with extra care. It wasn't louder or bigger, it was softer, as if someone had taken their time in a special way. The cover fit perfectly, centered as if measured, and the towel beneath it was folded into a neat square instead of casually draped. A thin ribbon held the bundle together, tied with a small bow that looked practiced, like hands that knew how to make things feel safe. Even the plate itself was different, heavier, with a faint floral pattern around the edge that reminded me of old cupboards and careful Sunday mornings. I carried it into the kitchen the way you carry something you don't want to drop, even when it isn't fragile. I set it on the counter and stood there for a moment, letting my heart slow down to match the quiet. Sometimes I think my body expects the world to be sharp, so when something feels gentle, it takes me a second to believe it. I lifted the cover and warmth rose up. Not just heat, but that soft scent of cinnamon and butter and something deeper, something like effort. Inside were cinnamon rolls again, but they were arranged in a perfect circle, each one brushed with glaze that caught the light like morning dew. They looked like they belonged in the center of a table where people were loved. For a quiet moment, I forgot to move. I simply stared, feeling the strange ache of gratitude that shows up when you realize someone spent time on you, even without knowing you. It made my chest feel both full and tender, like a bruise that has started to heal. Then I noticed it. the way I always do now, my eyes trained for the smallest hidden softness. Under the plate liner was a note, but not the tiny folded kind that slips in and disappears. This one was thicker, folded into a careful square, like a keepsake someone didn't want to lose. My fingers hovered over it as if it might be too personal to touch. I swallowed, feeling my throat tighten before I even knew why. The paper felt heavier than usual when I slid it free, like it carried more than ink. I didn't rush to open it. I made tea first, because I needed something warm in my hands for what I could already sense would be warm in my heart. I sat at my small kitchen table, the kind that wobbles slightly if you lean on it too hard, and I placed the note in front of me like a small folded truth. When I unfolded it, the creases resisted, as if they'd been pressed with intention. The handwriting was careful, not fancy, but steady, like the person had taken a deep breath before writing. I read the first line, and the world went quiet in a new way, the kind that makes sound feel far away. This swap helped me stay. I blinked hard once, then again. The words didn't blur because my eyes were tired. They blurred because my heart suddenly felt too big for my ribs. I read the next line slowly, like stepping onto a bridge you hope will hold. Thank you for making mornings feel possible. I sat back in my chair, tea cooling in my hands, and I let the message settle into me. Not as a dramatic confession, not as a reveal, but as something deeply personal that didn't need a name attached to it. It landed like a quiet hand on the shoulder, the kind that says, "I'm here, and I made it through." For a long moment, I couldn't think of anything clever or useful. All I could do was breathe and feel the weight of what this little tradition had become. It wasn't just pastries changing places. It was people catching each other in small, unseen ways. I thought about the notes I'd written, the ones meant for whoever needed them most. I thought about the lavender sprigs, the tea bags, the paper hearts, the tiny affirmations that had started appearing like soft footprints in fresh snow. I thought about the way my neighborhood, once just a collection of closed doors, had begun to feel like a shared breath. And then, more gently than any question I'd asked myself all month, a thought came. What if someone out there is still barely holding on? What if a windowsill and a cinnamon roll and a note are the only thing that makes their morning survivable? I didn't know who wrote the message. I would never know, and I understood why more than ever. Sometimes anonymity is not distance, it's protection, a way to receive kindness without having to explain your pain. So I didn't try to solve it. I didn't scan handwriting like a detective or stare too long at the windows across the street. Instead, I let the note be what it was, a quiet truth offered without demand. But I also knew I couldn't just fold it back up and go on as if nothing had changed. Because something had changed, and it was beautiful and serious at the same time. It made me want to honor the tradition, not by breaking it open, but by making it even softer. That afternoon, I found a small stack of blank cards in a drawer, leftovers from a time I thought I would send more mail. I chose the simplest one, cream-colored, with no design, because I wanted the message to feel clear and quiet. I wrote slowly, letting each letter be gentle. Take what you need, sweetness, comfort, or a gentle start. I stared at the sentence afterward, wondering if it was enough. Then I realized that enough is the whole point, because enough is what people are often missing. Enough rest, enough ease, enough softness to make it to the next morning. The next weekend, I placed my usual plate on the windowsill, warm rolls wrapped in a towel, covered carefully. And beside it, I set the card upright, leaning it against a small glass jar so it wouldn't tip over. The message faced outward, not toward any one neighbor, but toward the street, toward the morning, toward whoever needed to read it. I didn't know if anyone would understand what I meant. I didn't know if anyone would take comfort from it, or if it would feel too open for a tradition built on quiet privacy. But I had a feeling that softness recognizes itself. When I returned later that morning, my plate had been swapped as usual. In its place was a new covered dish, and next to it, something else had been added. A small paper heart tucked under the card like a gentle yes. Inside the swapped plate were little muffins, still warm, and a tea bag tied with twine. Under the liner was a tiny note, short and simple. It read, "I took comfort today, and nothing more." I pressed the note to my chest without thinking. My eyes closed for a moment, and I let my body feel what my mind already understood. This wasn't just baking, it was people choosing to keep going, one gentle morning at a time. Over the following weeks, the card became part of the ritual. Sometimes it was my card. Sometimes someone replaced it with a fresh one, rewritten in a different hand. The same message echoed like a lullaby. Sometimes an extra card appeared beside it with a new sentence like, "You're not behind," or "Today counts even if it's small." The windowsills began to look like tiny altars to ordinary survival. Not dramatic, not public, just quietly supportive, like we were learning how to be gentle witnesses to one another's lives. And through it all, we remained anonymous, which somehow made it feel even more sincere. One morning, I woke before my alarm again and stood at the window with my tea. The street was washed in sunrise, pale gold spilling between the buildings and making everything look softer than it really was. A few windows glowed with early light, and I imagined people moving quietly in their kitchens, tying ribbons, folding notes, breathing through whatever they carried. I didn't know their faces. I might never meet them, and that was okay. Because there are some kinds of connection that don't require introductions, only intention. I watched the sun climb slow and steady, and I felt the neighborhood holding itself together in small, unseen ways. Quiet care, shared warmth, and the steady return of soft mornings. And as my kitchen filled with the scent of cinnamon again, I rested my hand on the windowsill and let gratitude settle over me like sunlight.